everybody, and welcome back to Feeling Seen, the podcast that talks about the movies and characters that make us feel seen. And today, my co-host has an outstanding range of films that range in scale from small and intimate to big and bombastic, and yet retain such an intimate sense of drama and humanity, regardless, again, of how big or small the sweep of the narrative is. And I'm just very excited to have you on the show today. You may know his work from such films as Pig, the sensation cinematic experience, Pig, The Quiet Place, Day One, and the upcoming The Death of Robin Hood. Michael Sarnoski, I didn't ask you how to pronounce your name. Is that correct?
That was perfect.
Okay, what else do the people need to know about you before we get started?
That was an amazing intro.
Oh, good.
That makes me sound way cooler than I am. I don't know, anything I would say would just be a deflation for sure. Yeah, that was great.
Well, okay, I've seen your latest movie, the one that is coming up on my birthday, June 19th.
Happy soon birthday.
It's coming out. Yes, yeah. No, your movie's coming out, The Death of Robin Hood, and it stars Hugh Jackman, and who I believe is perhaps one of the great faces and presences of stage and screen living, Jodie Comer.
Oh my God, yeah.
Oh my God. And
did you see her play? Did you see Prima Facie?
My God, I only heard about it. No, I couldn't see it.
So good, incredible.
I find her to be just one of the most captivating performers.
Yeah.
Living at the moment. And it's kind of, I've been thinking of it as sort of like a postscript on the story of Robin Hood, an epilogue to the myth of Robin Hood.
Yeah.
And so tell us about your new movie as we get into, movies more broadly.
Yeah. So The Death of Robin Hood is, a movie about sort of an aging Robin who's kind of grappling with his life of violence and his legacy of this sort of folkloric character that he's starting to see arise. People are telling stories about him before he's even dead, and maybe he had a role in that. And it's about him kind of, coming to terms with that life of violence through a relationship that he forms with this prioress, Jodie Comer, after he's injured and ends up at this priory. It's based on an old ballad, an old Robin Hood ballad. We shot the whole thing in Northern Ireland for a year. It was an incredible experience. It's my favorite filmmaking experience I've had so far. It was, like you said, I went from doing tiny movies to big movies. And then this was meant to be kind of somewhere right in between, where I could kind of make it as an independent film, maintain control over it, surround myself with people that I loved working with. And it turned out to be exactly that. Amazing cast, amazing crew, lovely time living out in Northern Ireland. I'm very happy with it.
I mean, what a beautiful thing to hear. It's such a privilege to hear when people get to say, like, I made the movie I wanted to make. Yeah. And I had the experience that I wanted to have, because filmmaking, not even necessarily in a terrible way, but it's sort of inherently, it is a career of creative compromise and creative problem solving and finding solutions to difficulties that you couldn't have foreseen or you hoped were not going to happen. So it's just really lovely to hear of someone be like, I had a wonderful time in Northern Ireland making this movie with incredible actors, and it was a real dream come true.
I mean, of course there's always like headaches and problems that you have to solve, and you're always up against it with budget and time, but I don't know, this was one where, like, even those things, even when you're out in pouring rain and it's super muddy and freezing cold, all that stuff's like, oh, this is great, this is going in the movie. Like, even the hard stuff felt like right for it.
Well, for my own personal indulgence, how is it directing Jodie Comer?
Oh my, I gotta know. Incredible. It's hard to explain her, because she's both.
I believe that because I find her to be inexplicable almost in conveying my emotional reaction to her.
Yeah, because it's like she's both. She's got like a sweet childishness to her, yet also this like profound sort of age and depth to her that feels like just like wise beyond her years, and then she's also just like goofy and silly and sweet, and like I don't know. It's there's something very like mysterious about her in a very like fun, engaging way, and she can just go through such a range with her characters and convey so much depth to these characters, and we kind of needed that with the prioress, because she is sort of mysterious, and you learn about her past, and she has these kind of layers to her, but I mean, she was incredible as the prioress, and also just like really fun to have on set. She's just like a really nice, fun, normal person. Like she was lovely.
I feel like that series of descriptions is what I imagine like people were sitting around when they were like writing Killing Eve, and they were like, we need this for Villanelle.
Yeah.
And they just said all the words that you did,
Yeah.
and then Jodie Comer shows up in front of them, and they were like, wow.
Yeah.
We didn't think we'd find them all.
I mean, I think, and that's what made that Villanelle character so fun, is that, yeah, she's like a child, yet also this like professional killer who's like super experienced and great at reading people and a psychopath, and she somehow manages to play characters like that without making it feel put on or unnatural. And I don't know, she's incredible. It's amazing that she's really just at the beginning of her career, because I can't wait to see where it goes.
Well, I will stop indulging myself in just asking for the deep dive on Jodie Comer, but I'm so interested to talk about the character that you have brought in connection to your films as I've been thinking about them and I've been watching them, and it is the Sam Raimi iteration of Spider-Man. So Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man.
Yes.
Let's begin with your first impressions. When did you first meet this character in your life?
So I first met this character in my life, Spider-Man as a whole, or specifically the Sam Raimi Spider-Man?
Let's do specifically the Sam Raimi one, and then go ahead and tie that in if it was like, hey, there's a longer history with me in this comic.
There was a long history with that. So I first met it, I remember we had our 8th grade Washington, D.C. trip. It's like a thing that they would do every 8th grade. Like they would take the class and you would go see monuments. And that trip
my high school was like Model UN, and the Model UN class would go to Washington, D.C.
And that trip was like the weekend that Spider-Man came out, and I was always a Spider-Man fan. My dad used to read me Spider-Man comics as like my bedtime stories, and that character meant a lot to me. And I remember getting back from the DC trip back to Wisconsin, and like in my mind it was on the way back from the airport. I was like, Mom, you need to drop me off at the movie theater. But whatever it was like that weekend right after coming back from this DC trip, I had to get to the movie theater to see this, and I think I went to see it just alone. I think it was maybe the first time I went to see a movie alone.
Oh, that's huge.
Because I was like, I just need to get into the theater and see this movie. And it was just, I mean, there are lots of reasons why Peter Parker was really special to me, and then that movie experience was really special to me because it was a really formative experience for understanding filmmaking. Like I think seeing something that was so precious to me as Spider-Man, something that I had a relationship to that character and to Peter Parker. And then seeing a director lens that character through their own vision and like create a version of the character that would like, wasn't quite the version that lived in my head, but clearly was the version that lived in this other person's head. And I think as like a kid understanding that, like, we all have like versions of these characters that we have relationships to, that we have our own versions that live inside of us, and we can like express those to other people. And directors' jobs it's to like figure out a way of expressing their own inner world to other, like it was just like suddenly a bunch of stuff kind of clicked and like made sense to me in a weird way, and so that like that experience was a huge thing for me. And then that Peter Parker character, I think, had always, they said always he's like a nerd superhero, like the sort of quiet nerd who who like believes they have more to offer the world. Like he is that character. And what I think what made Tobey's version so fun was that like he's kind of like unlikable in like a sweet, like he's just like an unpleasant nerd. There's
something foundationally unlikable about Tobey Maguire on screen to me. So I am glad you said that.
But I don't even mean it. And he plays it as like what Peter Parker is, which is like this kind of like dweeb who like even when he's Spider-Man, he doesn't suddenly become like cool or like understand himself. And so like he ends that first movie just like crying and like has lost everyone that's important to him in his life. And like that was such a big part of that Peter Parker character, is like becoming a superhero like didn't solve his life. Like it just made it more complicated, and all the issues that he had just became that much more complicated. And he is sort of like this weird person, and he's still just like trying to do his best to like help the world and help people and like fulfill his responsibility. And I don't know, like I love all the Spider-Man movies. Like, Andrew Garfield did an amazing job, and Tom Holland's great, but like they're kind of like endearingly nerdy. They're sort of like charming nerds.
A little bit of She's All That nerdy. Where like, oh, they took off her glasses and now Lainey Boggs is the prom queen kind of thing.
But like with Tobey, it's like, oh, he like doesn't know how to interact with people. and like that was like fun to see.
Did you feel, did you feel a bit like the kid who had more to offer, who's quietly off in his own world sort of thing?
I mean, I
Or
was definitely quietly off in my own world. I don't know if I had enough confidence to believe that I had much to offer.
I was not sitting there thinking about what I had to offer.
Yeah, I was like, oh man, I wish I had something to offer. But but no, I definitely was like the quiet kid sitting off in his own world and, doodling superheroes and stuff.
And I was going to ask about that. When I've read that you were like, the filmmaking wasn't like something you were thinking about at the time. Like, I'm going to grow up and be a director. But like, I read you talking about like you doodle and drew comics like as your own sort of like private hobby. And I wondered what kind of comics you were drawing. Like, were you drawing your own things? Were you drawing Superman? Like, what were your heroes that you were penciling down?
Spider-Man was a big one. I used to like draw my own little Spider-Man comics and send him on my own fun adventures. And then I had all sorts of my own little characters. There was like a demon slayer guy that I would like, just like all the normal little boy comics. But I don't know. I think it was related to what turned into filmmaking, which was like this desire to like craft characters and stories of my own, and that's even what who was I was talking recently with someone about action figures, and like I had all these Spider-Man action figures, and like you play with action figures and you're like trying to like create these narratives with them and like revise the stories that are already being told about them, and like I think a lot of that stuff, not to like bring it into the Robin Hood thing, but like I think it was formative in sort of my understanding of kind of folk characters and heroes, and like the role that we all have in kind of like creating that narrative and playing around with it and experimenting with it. And so I think that was like the earliest version of that for me.
For sure. No, and I was thinking about that, like reading interviews with you and thinking about having watched Robin Hood, and obviously thinking about Pig, the two movies that are and Quiet Place Day One is I cried repeatedly throughout that movie, and my wife, every time the cat was in danger, she cried.
Yeah.
Which meant it was about every 5 minutes. I was like, you have to believe at this point that the cat's at least going to make it further. Like, you're just going to keep crying if you don't accept we're going to have the cat for at least a little longer. But I was thinking about like, I was reading something where you were talking about that a key aspect of any superhero movie is kind of like the weight of their power and the burden of their ability.
Yeah.
And sometimes, very much in the case of Peter Parker, like the grief that comes with the life that you have in this great epic journey that you are now on. Like, you're a boy of adventure and consequence, and you lose your uncle, you lose your Aunt May, you might lose Mary Jane. And then thinking about your characters with Nicolas Cage and Pig, and then with Hugh Jackman as Robin Hood, they too are characters who are reconciling. Like, I read you talking about like the weight of their choices, the characters with like the weight of their choices that have made them famous and the repercussions of dealing with that, and that feels very much like the life of a superhero as well. And I wanted to hear from you about sort of, it seems like an enduring interest, like regardless of a motivation that has taken you through a particular script, that seems to be like the consequence of a choice that brings you notice and reconciling with that. Why does that interest you perpetually?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think there is some fundamental thing that I'm always interested in exploring characters that like have experienced loss, and because of it feel lost, like feel like they, this is it for them in their lives, and then getting to see them sort of like have a second chance at life, and like find new discovery and find things about other people and themselves that they didn't think they would have the opportunity to find. Like, that's definitely a recurring thing. And yeah, I mean, I think that this sort of the superhero side of it is that like we gather our things together of how we define ourselves, and then sometimes that can be like a very limiting thing, and we like find our one trauma or like find that thing that sort of defines us, and then we like, and that can be like comforting to like understand yourself and figure out those things that define you. But then sometimes you can hit a moment in your life where you're like, oh, I've like let this thing become too much of part of who I am and like define me too much. How am I going to reconcile that with like the fact that I feel like I'm changing and that I want to grow? And then you have to figure out how to like rebalance those things that are like defining features of your life, whether that was a loss or a relationship or whatever, where it's like, how do I reintegrate these things and like figure out who I really am moving forward? And that's like a constant thing that we're always doing, is like what things are us and are precious to us, and then what things do we want to like expand upon and leave room for like more growth and more change.
And what was sort of with, it feels like Pigfield, I've read you talk about like the role of like grief and mourning a family member and processing that, and a story coming out of like a personal well in your life at that point. And like there are thematic things that arch over clearly into Death of Robin Hood from that kind of story and what we're talking about here. And then you have this middle portion where it's this big movie that's a continuation of a big studio property. And I wanted to hear about sort of whether, I don't know, a restriction or perhaps a liberation that comes with entering into sort of somebody else's sandbox, and what is sort of like the different emotional process of making a movie that you're stewarding in this huge enterprise compared to something where you're like living it so personally, or you're spending that year in Northern Ireland. Like, I want to hear about that kind of difference in your process.
Yeah, I mean, like, on some level, they're all sort of the same in that, like, you know, going from a tiny movie like Pig to a big movie like Quiet Place, at the end of the day, it's like, you know, yes, your team is much bigger, but it's really you talking to your heads of department, your production designer, your cinematographer, and then they happen to have departments that are like much bigger because you're trying to pull off much bigger things. But like, I tried to keep it still like feeling like, oh no, this is just a core group of creatives who are collaborating and figuring this stuff out. Also, like, one of the reasons I agreed to do Quiet Place was that they came to me and they said, John Krasinski said, you know, we want to do a day one New York City Quiet Place movie, but beyond that, have at it. Like, whatever characters, whatever story you want to do, go for it. But there's like a moment in the second Quiet Place where Jimon Hansu's character talks about that day one, and they were like, we want to like see some of that.
Yeah.
And they gave me like the weekend to think about it. And my way into the movie really was like, okay, what do I not want to see from a movie like this? Like, because like, you know, New York City invasion movies are kind of a genre unto themselves. Like we're going to see the military, we're going to see some scientists.
The bridges are going to close.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, I want to really avoid that stuff. And then even from like a basic level, it's like, okay, I don't want to do something about like, you know, someone trying to save their family or like reunite with their girlfriend and find like I was like, I want to avoid that stuff. So I ended up on this idea of like, what if I didn't even have a character that was planning on like surviving this thing? Like, what if I started with someone in hospice and she just wants to go get her favorite slice of pizza, and basically it's like she's, in a weird way, her superpower in the movie is that she's kind of ahead of the curve. Like, she's had to kind of cope with death and realizing that like her world was falling apart, and now it's like her city itself is kind of catching up with her. And I really wanted it to feel like this is this like walk down memory lane of like reconnecting with her city one last time as it sort of like meets her in death. And like that was sort of what I landed on. And then I talked to John on Monday, and they were like, okay, now you can like pitch us what you would do. And I was like, literally my pitch started with like, I don't think this is the most marketable version of this movie, but like I would follow a dying cancer patient who decides to go get pizza on the last day. And it was like a minute long, and I said it basically being like, it was nice of you to consider me. Now, like, I think we sort of see where our sensibilities lie.
Yeah.
And to his credit, he was like, heck yeah, let's do it. And then, of course, you go through the whole like studio system of people gradually questioning all that stuff and being like, oh, audiences don't love that she dies, and like all that fun stuff. But part of why I signed on to that movie was that, like, you know, I had sort of my unlikely into the story that I was interested in, and they were supportive enough to let me take a crack at that. So yeah, you get into like all the kind of bigger studio politics, and everyone's trying, like, there's a lot of fear and like a lot of people wondering what their bosses want and reacting to audiences, and it can sort of like dumb certain things down. But like at the end of the day, it was that sort of like core emotional thing that got me through it. And like, I think weirdly for me, that I think that story came from, I think Pig was about me grappling with like the long-term effects of my dad's dying, and like how I and my family members had sort of like built our lives around that, and like how we interacted with the world around us based on that loss. I think Quiet Place was kind of like, it was almost like, oh, I had finally made a movie, and I think I went through a phase where I suddenly became like, okay, I finally am doing the thing that I've wanted to do. What if I just fucking die? Oh, I'm not allowed to swear. Sorry.
No, you are.
Oh,
you are, yeah.
Okay. What if I just like died now? Like, how would I like, it's that feeling of like, once it feels like life is kind of going in a direction that you're excited about, you become like hyper aware of how like this could end at any moment.
Sure, yeah.
And I think that was sort of like something that was on my mind of like, okay, I've made my one thing, and like I'm finally like heading in a direction. I suddenly feel like what if I died right now? Like, what would that feel like? What would that mean to my life? And how would I make sense of like what my life could have been and what the things that I wanted to do? And that was kind of like Lupita's story. Like the Sam character's story was like, you know, she had been like a poet and like, you know, but she was kind of cut down like right as she was starting to like form a life, and it made her sort of like alienate herself from the things that she loved. And so like getting to sort of like see someone who was facing like the end of the world and the end of her own life kind of find connection and joy and meaning in her life was like a fun exercise for me.
I like hearing, like thinking of your movie sort of in terms of the elevator pitches. It's like I'm so glad people have said because I feel like you've kind of stepped into these situations and sort of defied the conventional. It's like, so it's a guy and a pig in the woods. So it's a terminal cancer patient at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
And what if Robin Hood was a self-loathing murderer?
Yeah.
People have been like, you know what, Michael?
But like a nice
we'll take
murder.
that bet.
No, like he kills kids and stuff. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Has it like, I don't know. I guess, is it just sort of like, do you have to sort of talk yourself into like, no, you got to stick with it. This is your idea and you have to be you? Or is that like is coaching yourself through it something you've had to do? Or because like you're saying, you're like, I wasn't like a kid sitting around with so much confidence thinking like I had so much to offer the world. But like as a creative, do you find that sense of confidence? Be like, they're going to either like it or not. Like, how are you getting into these meetings and being like, I know, studio, you might not be thinking you want to say yes to this, but here I am.
I mean, step one is I've accepted that I'm terrible at pitching, and I just like lean into like I mean, that's why Robin, like I never pitched Robin Hood. I wrote it on spec and was just like, here's the thing. Do you like it or do you not?
Yeah.
And it was the same with Pig. Like I never really had to pitch Pig because I wrote it on spec and then just started shopping it around, and like we took it to like 10 production companies and 9 of them were like, absolutely not. Like he doesn't beat anyone up. Like, what are you, crazy? But then like what I learned
quite the opposite of beating somebody up.
What I learned is that like you just need that one yes. And like that, so like one company was like, ooh, this is our kind of weird. Like we're into this. And then that snowballs from there. And the cool thing is then you end up being surrounded by people that like aren't just doing it. It's actually something like I'm cautious about now is like, oh, are people just going to want to work with me because like I've made a couple successful movies and they like I'm some sort of like reliable commodity, and like I actually try and keep in mind how to like not default to that, but to find people that are like excited about. And that was the same thing with Robin, was like surrounding myself with like producers and creatives that like were just like excited by this material. But yeah, I try to, in some ways I think the weirder projects like help filter out the sort of bullshit people.
Sure.
and it helps attract the people that are like legitimately just like interested in doing the weird thing. But also like I think those ideas they come from like when I first came up with sort of the basic idea for Pig, I knew that like it was like a silly idea, and that's what excited me. It was like, okay, let me try and write this script and like take this thing that like on the surface seems like a silly idea, but like I feel like there's something to it for me, and see if I can like turn it into something that I believe in. And it was the same with Robin. Like initially when I wrote it, you know, I knew, you know, we've had way too many Robin Hood movies. We don't need another Robin Hood movie. Like that would be crazy to write a Robin Hood movie. But I had this kind of like vibe of this movie that stuck with me and that I was interested in, and I wrote it as like an exercise of like, okay, I need to get this out. Maybe it will be so dumb and so silly to do, but like I want to explore this thing that like might not work. Like
right.
I like writing a script that on paper it sounds like it could easily not work at all. Same with Quiet Place. Like I like writing something that like in some ways shouldn't work, and so like finding the path through. And I do a lot of it sort of like intuitively. Like I do a lot of like vomit pass writing,
Sure.
and then editing from there, and like sort of figuring out the structure and the thematics. Like after
I like that too. I like get a whole data dump.
Yeah.
That like really, because then I can shape from there. But I find like, not that I'm anti-outline, they're very handy, but I find that it almost kind of like kills my brain a little bit.
Yeah. I think it helps you find the things that like, one, that surprise you, and two, that like the things that actually fascinate you. You're like, oh, I seem to be returning to this well, and like there's something there, and like, oh, that actually like connects to this other thing that like for some reason I liked, but I wasn't sure where it belonged in there. And so like I like to write things that like seem crazy, might not work out, and like I've written scripts that are like, yeah, I was like, I want to give this a go. I write the script and I'm like, you know what? Yeah, that didn't totally work. But like I think it's fun to like play on the cusp there and like discover things and do things that you're not sure that they're gonna work out. Because I feel like, yeah, a lot of movies, I think a lot of studio stuff especially, they're like, okay, we need to have this, and that, and then that'll be a big success. And it's like, I don't know, I want to go in and be like, well, this could be terrible, and then like, but like there's something there that's sticking for me. Let me like mine that, because in that unlikely discovery, that's where like the fun stuff happens for me and hopefully for the audience.
Well, that totally makes me think of Sam Raimi. Like, and you talking about like watching the Spider-Man movie and it kind of clicking with you of like, okay, this isn't even like my Peter Parker in my head, but this belongs to him, and it's being very clearly realized in such a way that I'm sticking onto it, and it feels like so many entries from Sam Raimi, from Send Help, which like he did, right, but recently how it was executed, obviously all the way back to Evil Dead, to why am I forgetting the name of his Curse movie now? Drag Me to Hell. Where I remember the first time I watched this movie, it was Darkman, and I didn't like it because it was too weird. Like I was little, and I was just like, this movie is stupid. And it wasn't stupid. It's just extremely Sam Raimi. And then I revisit it later. I'm like, oh my God, this is so good. And even I feel like such an enduring hallmark of his Spider-Man is that, he's proven this like over and over, even somebody working within the studio system, you can still feel like that signature imprint of Sam Raimi on it. And so I wanted to hear, just as a director now with 3 films behind you, about, this movie that meant so much to you when you were little, this character, but now like as a filmmaker, I just want to hear your thoughts on some Sam Raimi.
I love Sam Raimi. When I first, I've never met Sam Raimi. I would love to meet him someday. When I first, Evil Dead was actually like a very formative movie for me because it got me interested in prosthetic makeup effects.
Awesome.
And that was actually weirdly, before I thought I was going to be a writer or an editor or any of that stuff, like I wanted to do special effects makeup in movies. Like
cool.
I would just do it for fun on my own. And like, honestly, I made like a short zombie movie in college, mostly because I had a TA buddy who was putting a team of students together to make a zombie movie. And I said, I really want to do the makeup for this. Like that's I'm like, I can't wait. As long as I can do the makeup, I'll help out in any way I can. And they had like a writer and a director from this group of students. And gradually everyone slowly fell out. So like the writer fell out. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll write the script as long as I can do the makeup for it. And then the director dropped out, and I was like, okay, I'll direct this script too, and then I ended up not being able to do the makeup on it because I had too many other things to do.
Wow, but fate had other plans.
Yeah, but like I always loved prosthetics and like I would just like get nose putty and just like sculpt stuff all over my face, and I just found that stuff really fascinating. And a lot of that just came from like I loved watching Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 and 3 and just like watching like I don't know like all the like you just like feel they have these like claymation like animated decaying stuff and like like it's really like in your face about the fun of that stuff. And I think as like a kid I just like found that stuff really fascinating and fun. So I fell in love with that. And I think that there's like a love for filmmaking that you just feel in Sam Raimi's movies, like. And it's not that they don't like take themselves seriously, but like they're having fun. Like you're even in the scary stuff, like in the second Spider-Man when Doc Ock wakes up and he like taps into his horror stuff, and you're like seeing all the sort of like claw POV shots as he's killing all these. It's like horror and horrific and violent, but like campy and over the top and fun and like, and it's just unabashedly Sam Raimi. And like I don't know, like I think I think Sam Raimi's an incredible director, but I would much rather watch a bad movie by a director who like has a vision and has a take than like watch just some cookie cutter, well made whatever movie. Like I think I'm not saying Sam Raimi makes bad movies. I'm just saying like that means
like
so
a Roger Corman kind of thing. Yeah. It's like you watch it, it's like that's a Roger Corman movie. Or that's a Russ Meyer movie.
Yeah, and I love that. And like it can go to like it can become a commodity too much where it's like now, you see it with, Marvel had brought Sam Raimi on to do the Doctor Strange movie. And like, you can tell that there's some thinking of like, oh, let's bring like, a director who has a vision and like, let's commodify the vision and turn it into like some big thing.
Yeah.
And that doesn't work as well like that. And that's something I'm always cautious about is like, even with Quiet Place, when I was signing on to that, it's like, oh, I don't want to just do the like, oh, they're taking like an indie director who has
Right.
like a voice, and now they think they can like sort of use that to bring some style to like a franchise, and
Yeah,
like,
put Josh Trank with Fantastic
Yeah.
Four, like that pipeline.
and so it can become commodified within the industry in like a negative way, that then it's like that's not what that was about, like. So I'm always sort of like cautious about that a little bit, but I don't know, I think Sam Raimi's done an incredible job with maintaining that voice throughout his career.
Now, if you were like growing up on like Evil Dead, were you a horror fan growing up at all?
I was a horror fan growing
Okay,
up. I
just
was
curious.
and weirdly, like, I'm not that much anymore. I think
Huh.
as you get older, you're just like, I don't know, the world's horrific enough. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that the fork does, I think, go off on the road a bit as you either like you're like this the horrors of the world, I feel soothed by hitting the tuning fork and putting it on screen in front of
Yeah.
me, or like I simply must cleanse my mind of this particular kind of stress and anxiety. I went down the fork for more horror. So
Yeah.
I always like to see what people's temperament is with
I
that.
was I really I liked horror a lot growing up. I especially liked zombie movies. I think some of that came from, I had a history teacher in high school who like sort of told, he was like explaining zombie movies to me and their sort of like their political meaning and like all the,
Totally.
and I was like, wow, this is crazy. So I went down a rabbit hole with that, and then I fell in love with like the makeup side of things through zombie movies. And then through that, like, I explored other horror stuff that I became interested in. But yeah, I think it was like I feel like in my 20s, I just like horror movies like stopped doing it for me. I think they were like a really engaging outlet from like a angsty angle, and also like a technical side of like the gore and makeup. I just like really loved that stuff.
Yeah.
And then I don't know. I think as I got older, for some reason, I was like, I don't know. Like I doesn't. I'm not like, oh, I really want to go get scared tonight. Like,
No, that's completely fair.
I don't know what that is.
I have a friend who my friend who showed me Pig. She sat and cried as she was showing it to me. Like, this movie moves her so powerfully, and she's like, "You haven't seen Pig. I insist that you watch it with me. I don't want anybody else to show you this movie." So of course I had to message her, and I was like, "Is there anything else? Is there anything you need me to ask
Yeah.
Michael Sarnoski?" And I feel like the way that she phrased this question will just be such a dead giveaway that she is a person in the industry. She asked, what are your white spaces of white spaces?
Is this
Which I've learned that like development people say when they're talking about like the things you haven't explored yet. Like, what are now with Pig, it's something sort of like, so it's like it's a revenge thriller, but it's like a muted character study.
Yeah.
You've done big spectacle, alien invasion. You are taking on now like myth and medieval in Robin Hood, and she wanted to know which. She's one of my dearest friends, so I
Yeah.
wanted to make sure and get this question in of what sort of pathways, genres, openings are you
Yeah.
feeling most curious about or inspired by right now?
I've never heard white spaces.
This is
I
my
like
first
this.
time doing like a full reader calling.
No,
question.
can I ask your friend's name so I can?
Her name is Margot Carlson.
Margot.
Yes.
My white spaces are, I don't really like. There aren't like specific genres that I'm drawn to. It always starts with like a character thing. Like, there's always some like vibe and character, and usually some kind of like image that grabs me. So like I'm very open to it. Like, next up, I'm doing Death Stranding, which is a video
That's
game
crazy,
adaptation.
by the way. That's insane.
Do you know Death Stranding?
Yes,
Do you,
yes. I remember when my Twitter feed was absolutely fucking nothing but Death Stranding. So that's just that's massive. Congratulations.
Yeah, and like that wasn't, that was a combination. Like, I wasn't like, oh, I got one for me, one for them. It's time to do a big studio movie. Like, it wasn't that. It was just like talking to Hideo Kojima and like hearing how much, like, it was sort of the same thing with Quiet Place, where they're like, do a movie that takes place in this world, does not have to use any of the characters from the game, does not have to be the story from the game. And that was like so exciting to be like, to play the games and sort of get the vibe that I was excited about, and then sort of create a character around what vibe in the world fascinated me, and like create a sort of story that was like adjacent to the games, but sort of explore like, so that, I wasn't like, oh, I gotta go do a big sci-fi like studio movie, but it was like, that at the end of the day, that's what we're gonna be doing. But it was vibe and character that attracted me. So I don't think there's like one genre or area that I'm like that focused on exploring. But I just love like finding them and find like I just wrote a pilot that like is kind of a comedy, like like
I love that for you.
yeah, and like I don't know, I enjoy just sort of like I find these characters in these worlds that I just want to like live in and explore, and they often then find some sort of genre home and then subvert that genre home in some way, but like I don't know, it all comes, I like sort of letting it come from like an organic place. So there's not like one area that I'm like, oh, I gotta make my romance movie. Like I'm just like no, like I'll find a character that I love and just figure out what world they want to live in.
Well, Margot's a gamer too, so I'm glad you brought up the Death Stranding aspect of it. That's like, or the Venn diagram just gonna get smaller and smaller of like the things that of you do that she loves.
This one's for you, Margot.
Well, that's actually. And you know, I will relinquish the hopes of a horror movie since that's not necessarily your.
I mean, but you never know. Like after Pig, I told my reps, I was like, I don't want to make some big jump into a studio thing. I don't want to do horror. And then, like on some level, I ended up doing exactly that. I didn't really approach.
You did. Yeah, you did. Like, I say that like Quiet Place Day One is not a fucking horror movie.
Yeah, and I didn't really. I approached it more as like a drama, and even so, it's sort of also more of like an invasion disaster movie. But like, no, it's like people would call it a horror movie on some level, and like, but yeah, it was. So even when I say like this is absolutely not what I'm gonna do, I'll probably end up doing it. So
wait, this I have a question that keeps going. Because your movies have like a gravity and what's a comedy movie that you like? Now that you've mentioned, like, it's kind of what's a kind of comedy sensibility? I want to know what comedy movie you watch when you're like, I just want to laugh, so I'm putting this on for the however manyth time.
I mean, there's
what does Michael Sarnoski do to laugh?
So my light movie. So like I love The Princess Bride. That's that's a very special one, and it's a special one to the Robin Hood movie too, because it is a movie about like sort of it's a movie that kind of like changes with you as you get older, and you like it's an adventure, and then you realize it's like this sort of meta satire, and like and it's like, but it's also sort of, you know, playing with kind of the world that Robin Hood also plays with, and that's a big one. Weirdly, my like a feel good movie that I've watched a lot that if I just kind of want like this, it's No Country for Old Men, which
really?
I find
a comedy for the ages.
Well, but like the Coens are hilarious. Like they make funny comedies, but I find they're like ones that like aren't on at face value comedies, the funnier ones. Like No Country for Old Men is hilarious. Like it has some very funny moments in it. And that's one that like that's sort of like a comfort movie for me. And I don't know, it makes me, yes, it's like violent and dark, but like it's pretty hilarious in some spots too.
I want to do a podcast with you that's comedies with Michael Sarnoski, where you just tell us your favorite comedies in the eye of the beholder.
I think so. I think rewatch No Country and like you'll chuckle a bit in that movie. Like
we had a real Barton Fink era in this podcast earlier this year. And that one is like, I feel like it is more obviously defined as a comedy, but it's also a harrowing movie.
Yeah.
It's filled with anxiety.
Yeah.
There's a serial murderer. Like it's very stressful, which is obviously what the Coen brothers do.
Yeah. No, they play with comedy and darkness better than any. I mean, it's like and yeah, when they're leaning into the darkness and not thinking too much about the comedy, I think it's some of the funniest stuff because it sneaks up on you. Like like Anton Chigurh's interactions with just all of his interactions, they're terrifying and hilarious. Like
he is like an alien dropped in from another dimension who is now forced to interact with human beings.
Yeah.
Disclosure Day, Anton Chigurh.
Yeah, I find that movie hilarious and and comforting. It's also such like a meticulously made movie, and it has such like limited score, and like I don't know, when I need to just like get into a zone, like it's a great movie to watch.
Well, with it's like Princess Bride, with Spider-Man, with you know, multiple movies that you have made. It's sort of taking lore either just as like the bones of something. Like it feels like watching a kind of fallen superhero movie, watching Pig, and that is what the Death of Robin Hood is kind of fallen superhero in the sort of medieval sense movie. With Spider-Man meaning so much to you as a boy, and through the comic and the movie, and this like connection that you have with your dad reading it to you, and the space that heroism and myth sort of occupied for you there, what does that sense of like heroism and myth mean for you now as an adult? Yeah,
that's a great question. I don't know if I think about heroism as much. I think I think about like for me, Robin is a lot about storytelling and empathy. And like I think we create heroes and we try and create these characters and try and like assign ideas to them that like mean so much, and then sometimes that can get in the way of just like basic human connection and like basic understanding of like what responsibility we have in like the stories that we tell. And like Robin's very much about that, like the sort of power of stories to help and hurt other people, and that, you know, lies and stories and all these things, they're not inherently good or bad, they're just like tools that we can use. And so like I don't know, I think creating heroes is like a dangerous thing. Like I think those things can be very easily manipulated and used to get ideas across that maybe aren't the best ideas or maybe don't help us. And so I just want us to be all like a little more critical of like the narratives that we sort of like take for granted and that we spread or consume. And I think for me, that's what this has more been about. And I don't know, do I believe in heroes? I mean, I don't know. I believe in like incredible people that sacrifice for themselves and for other people. And I think that's beautiful. But I also believe that we are like, you know, like bad at when we see like heroic figures, we want to like glorify them and be told by them how we should live our lives. And I don't think that's necessarily like a good instinct. That probably comes from like our old tribal days where you did just kind of lean on the warrior king to like tell you how to live your life. And like that's not probably a great way to live our lives anymore.
I mean, because I like thinking about them sort of all like handshaking together. It feels like your central characters feel so often like almost like heroic counter programming. Like with like even when you see him in like the basement fight in with Nick Cage, and you're like, we're gonna see it now. Like and you don't get that catharsis the way you think you're gonna get it. Your central figure in Quiet Place is dying. It's not like, well, maybe despite the odds. Like, no, it is, her story is written. Yeah. It's just the punctuation mark kind of on the end. And then with Robin Hood, even like him having to literally insist to people like, he's not who you think he was. Like he wasn't this, he wasn't this. And so it's interesting to think of, it's just interesting to think of like all, like each of the things that you've done from your own very personal work to the IP of others seems to like counter program that notion of heroism.
Yeah. I think it's like, and I don't want to say that heroes don't exist and that amazing people don't exist, but we probably have like an unhealthy relationship with them in our world. And like, you know, it's not to get hokey, but like one of the most heroic people I've seen is my mom, who like raised 2 kids as a single mother. And like, you know, she like sacrificed so much, but like, she's not the kind of person that like we deem as heroic or make movies about. And like, you know, I think the sort of like quiet heroism that we all go through in our lives is I don't know, more meaningful and important to focus on rather than the like spectacle hero stuff that is like, oh, beat up the bad guy and and do the good thing and get the girl and call it a day. Like that's fortunately or unfortunately not what most of life really is. And I think we shouldn't feel separate from that stuff as people that are just sort of like struggling with our day-to-day lives and figuring stuff out.
Well, I'm going to keep my hope on you go find your way to the white space based purely on this. There is a knock down, drag out, literal house on fire action scene in this movie. Combat action scene of Death and Robin Hood. Yeah. And I'm fucking ready for you to make your Gareth Evans like grit ass action movie because the chops are there, Michael.
I love doing that stuff. Like it's you know, I didn't set out to make Robin to be like, oh, I can't wait to do a bunch of action scenes, but like planning that stuff and doing this stuff in Quiet Place, like, you know, it's never sort of like the main focus for me, but like it's a blast and like it's fun to shoot that stuff. It's hard, but it's really fun to design and shoot that stuff. And we had a really good time on Robin figuring out some like gnarly fight scenes. And
it is. I was like, "Oh my god, is this the Northman?"
Yeah,
and it's a different kind of movie. But I was like, I was like the Northman version of this movie, I would have also really liked. Yeah, you crushed it. That scene is fucking awesome.
Yeah, I was really happy with that. And step one was we built a hut that could practically burn the entire time, so we didn't do any fire CGI.
I read you say that somewhere, and that's insane.
It was cool.
That's like magic.
It was a whole logistical thing with like many departments because we had to like build the hut partially out of metal because if you burn, well, like it had to be able to burn for like 15 minutes at a time to do these like long fight scenes, which some of them we shot as like oneers, and like it's we had to build the roof out of metal and then make it so that it could have pieces that could remove so that you can actually see the fire like growing over the course of it. And like it was a whole crazy thing, but like it was so worth it. Like it's just like I think everyone assumes that was just like, I don't know, VFX. Like we didn't do VFX fire for that. That was practical, and it just added to, I mean, it's the same with like people rolling around in this mud, and like it was just muddy and miserable and fiery, and it was great. And like, but we needed to like, because like I wanted that stuff to be spectacular and like fun to watch, but also like you have to believe in it because it's supposed to be disturbing. Like the violence is like unpleasant and upsetting, and like you want to get why this guy has a history of violence that he's struggling with, because this stuff is like not glamorous, pretty violence. This is like if you finish that part being like, oh my God, please stop showing me violence. Like that's the point, is like when we get to the Priory, it's kind of this breath of like, oh, thank God I don't have to see any more people like get their jaws ripped off.
Well, I'm the kind of sicko who loves to see a jaw ripped off.
And if you enjoy it, enjoy it. I mean, I enjoyed that stuff too, but it's like, it's supposed to be like, you're supposed to believe in it to the point where it's like nauseating at times.
Well, I did. So that's not the whole, but like as a tease for like the range of what you can expect for in The Death of Robin Hood, there's a lot for cinema fans of any dimension. And I am just so happy that you came on the program, and I really appreciate you for taking the time to talk to us here today, Michael. This was really lovely.
This was great. Thank you so much.
Yes, absolutely.
Maximum Fun,
a worker-owned network
of artist-owned shows.
Supported
directly
by you.